welcome to another episode of What the Fuck Paranormal with the Naked Bigfoot. I am your humble host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. Um, just to give it a second for people to join in before we start up with tonight's festivities. Oh, Amazon Fire TV, Super Horror Show. That's fast. I didn't know people still did that. That actually plays in nicely on tonight's theme. Um, but before we get started, as always, I always start off every chat uh, talking about news, business, whatever popped into my head. Um, for those who saw last night's episode about the Are Creepypasta Creatures Real? Uh, hey, Chris, I am wide awake. Is the best I can say tonight. I am wide awake. But last night's episode about Are Creepypasta Creatures Real? And I made my confession of doing the Smile Dog experiment on Twitter. For those who do not know, who have not seen that episode yet, everybody should take a minute to go to watch that. But I posted I did an experiment with probably one of the oldest um, creepypastas in existence before creepypasta was a term or a trend, was the Smile Dog. And no one hasn't been talking about the Smile Dog for a very, very long time. So as an experiment to see if Super Horror Show, welcome Mike. Good to see you, man. Good to have you on tonight. Um, uh, Super Horror Show. I don't know that you've done an episode. You haven't animated anything about Smile Dog yet, but I would love to see you do an animation featuring the Smile Dog. I would love to see you animate that. I'd love to see your take on Smile Dog. Because I did indeed reintroduce Smile Dog to the world by putting him on him thing on Twitter. Uh, uh, I've introduced Twitter to a very old and ancient creepypasta, Smile Dog. So I've been getting some interesting feedback. I've also noticed that Smile Dog is finding its way around Twitter right now, which I find fantastic. So Smile Dog has found a home on Twitter now. So let's see what comes of it. When I'm far and gone from this world, there'll probably be stories about Smile Dog haunting Twitter and the Twitter users and Twitter followers. Um, but you'll be okay as long as you follow the rules that Smile Dog sets forth. If you follow the rules, you'll be okay. If you don't follow the rules, you won't be okay. Okay. That's it for Smile Dog. So, um, the power did come back on after those massive storms that came through Virginia, swept through Virginia, and knocked out power to a huge portion of Virginia, including the Blue Ridge Mountain chains here in Virginia. Knocked out power everywhere. I know, Chris. The thing is, Chris, I'm going to accept the blame to it. That's my mark I leave on Twitter. Um, Unleashing the Smile Dog on Twitter. I'm actually really excited about it. Probably shouldn't be. I'm a bit of a dick for doing it. But I was just curious. I was the old curiosity that I had 30 years ago um, welled back up in me again. That old curiosity did. Uh, and the need to test and experiment welled up in me again. Smith family, thank you for coming on tonight. Good seeing you. And that's what it. I felt young again when I did it. I felt like I did when I used to travel on all the back roads here in the United States, seeking out the strange and unusual, and writing about it in my journals and experiencing it firsthand. Um, I thought those days were long behind me, but who knew? I was able to experience that thrill again by unleashing Smile Dog on Twitter. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about Smile Dog. The more I talk about Smile Dog, the worse it's gonna get. um, oh, thank you so much, Smith family. That was pretty awesome of you to do it. Oh, and let me thank everybody ahead of time for everybody's support. Um, Everybody knows that I do this for fun, and I do this for the purpose of sharing stories and um, passing along information, passing along some of the things I've learned, fuck some of the things I experienced and dealt with. So I do this for fun. Um, I like having a nice sized audience who will come in and listen. A storyteller is not a storyteller unless he has an audience. So thanks to everybody who helped me build my audience and introduce people to this old storyteller. Uh, okay, let's start with the disclaimers for tonight's show. As always, the views and opinions expressed by your humble host, myself, Mike the Bigfoot, are solely those of myself and no one others. I am not here to persuade or dissuade you. Change your belief in, your religious belief or your fundamental belief in reality. What I do hope to do is to be both educational and informative, educational, and entertaining. So if you enjoy the episode um, and it fills you with curiosity to go forth and discover more about this bright, beautiful, wonderful world, and I feel like my work is done. If you enjoy the storytelling that I do, um, and it's brought a smile to your face, then again, Amy, I am very happy um, that I was able to do that. Storytellers like to bring joy and happiness in people's lives. But sometimes with my stories, they'll scare the shit out of you too. So a little scary in one's life can be fun. But if you do go out and explore this big, large, wonderful world of ours, and are curious about the paranormal, supernatural, preternatural, unusual things that exist in our world outside of the natural laws, I ask that you do so both sanely and safely. Do not take unnecessary risks to bring yourself psychological, spiritual, or physical harm. Do not use the naked Bigfoot as an example of shit to do. Use him as an example of shit not to do. So I've done a lot of dumb shit for the sake of learning and experiencing. Um, and I managed to get through it. Sometimes with experience, but most of the time with blind, stupid luck. And that takes us to the next part. If you have small children in the room tonight and do not wish to expose them, or whenever you watch any of my episodes, if you do not wish to expose them to naughty language or bad words, please ask them to leave the room while you are viewing my videos. Because I will be dropping the F-bomb on occasion, well, frequently. And I will be saying other vulgarities, but that is part of my vernacular. It is not something I do just to be doing. It's just something that is part of my storytelling technique, to punctuate moments. So if you do insist on having them in the room but don't wish them to learn these words early on in life, please listen to my show with a pair of headphones on. That would be appreciated. And if you do not appreciate the use of naughty words, sex magic. Yes, super horror show, sex magic. If you go, that episode is gonna haunt me to my dying day. Sex and the Paranormal. If you haven't viewed that episode yet, it is a quite popular episode. um, that goes off track very quickly. Um, and was also a lot of fun for me to do. Between the giggling fits and dumb shit that I said and the giggling fits, I think I provided some useful information. Plus, I talked a lot of shit about Zach Bagans again, which is something I do frequently and often. Still haven't got that cease and desist order yet, but I'm sure it's on its way. I need to actually, and the sex and the paranormal. It was meant to start. It was supposed to, and I'm just let me stop for a minute. It was supposed to be a serious episode, but it went to hell really fast once I started talking. Because as those who are used to my storytelling ways, who have seen previous episodes or know me, know that I frequently digress into a myriad of directions with the way I think and the way I tell the story, and some of those directions can be rather interesting to say the least. So you haven't seen the episode Sex and the Paranormal, uh, please watch it, but viewer discretion is strongly advised. It should be a rated R episode. Oh, that episode. Oh, God. I don't know how it stayed on Twitter for as long. I mean, stayed on YouTube for as long as it has, but it has. I think if any of the YouTube police saw it, they probably laughed themselves stupid watching it. So I'm glad they enjoyed it. Definitely don't have your kids in the room when you watch that episode. Oh, fuck. Y'all gonna make me start coughing tonight bringing up that episode. Look what you did, Super Horror Show. Okay. We also play a get me back on track, people. We also play a drinking game on my shows. Every time you hear me say that's a story for another day or that's a story for another time, please take a sip and or shot of your adult beverage of choice. If you do not imbibe adult beverages, please take a shot or a drink of your tea, juice, lemonade, or whatever it is if you wish to participate in the game tonight. If you do imbibe adult beverages, 500 years of people watch it. Yeah, they'll realize that my show is called What the Fuck Paranormal for a reason, too, Chris. If you do, if you do imbibe adult beverages and are playing the drinking game tonight, uh, please do not drink and drive. Okay? Amy! Okay, tonight's subject. As everybody knows from the title for tonight, we'll be talking about, and the description, about something really interesting that I've been actually asked about a great deal. Um, when I actually spent time in the field, before I finally settled down with my life and spent time in the field dealing with paranormal occurrences and paranormal happenings. And it was the idea of can electronic devices be haunted? Not just talking about radios or even cell phones, televisions, which of course makes you think of Carol Ann from Poltergeist. Every time I think of that, when I start talking about this with anybody, I think of Carol Ann, from Poltergeist, and how she's communicating with her family in her spirit form through a television set. and that the spirits of the dead were able to enter the world through that television set and manage to manipulate their world and eventually take her away to the spirit world. But that was a movie. That was fiction, wasn't it? Could that really happen? Yes, it can happen. Maybe not with the special effects and pyrotechnics of a Hollywood movie, um, but a spirit, whether it be once human, a ghost, so to speak, once human, unhuman, or inhuman. As everybody knows, those are the three types of spirits that I discuss mostly on any of my chats. Once human being the traditional ghost, unhuman being an elemental creature, an elemental spirit, inhuman, a creature that exists solely in the spirit world, that if it had access to our world, would need the energy in a form in which to act in our world. For those who have never heard those terms being used to describe spirits, it's something I do frequently because I've had experience in dealing with all three types in my lifetime. Now, for my paranormal investigators that are out there who love their electronic toys, this episode is, something they're already well aware that happens. Whether they use a spirit box, millimeters to detect spirits that are in a room or a place or a location, that help them communicate with these spirits, to give a voice to spirits. And these spirits are able to interact with these electronic devices. So I guess you could say they are haunted devices. That there is a certain... Now, when I use the term possess, I hate that word, possession. It just brings up, images of The Exorcist or some shit like that. Possession in its purest form is what I like to talk about. Spirit possessing something or somebody, an inanimate object or a person or an animal for that matter. It's when the spirit blends its energy with your own and overlays its personality and its energy across yours, and for a brief period of time suppresses your consciousness is suppressed and is overridden by the spirit that is possessing you. And there may not be truly any physical signs that if you're around other people, that you have been quote unquote possessed, or if an object, if a radio or a television set has been possessed, that this consciousness has taken over and is using your energy to power itself, to act through you, to drive your body, to drive, a television, to change the channels on a television set, to speak to you through a car radio, to turn off your car, to use up all the energy of your battery and your car, and make your car turn off. And since I talk about energy, spirits are
in their fundamentalist senses. We all know. We know this. This is not new. This is nothing new. I don't have, this is no big revelation to everybody out there. If it is, then fucking hallelujah. I'm able to teach you something. But most people know that spirits, all three types, that especially all three types I discuss, are manifestations of energy. They are energy. Some of that energy is more powerful than others, depending on the spirit and the will of that spirit, and the type of spirit that it is. And all around, especially in the modern age, we walk through as human beings a miasma of energy now. It's all through the air. All of it's electromagnetic energy, radio energy, digital energy that is just permeating our atmosphere and permeating the air around us, and that we just walk through it. And the only way that we're able to interact with it is with other devices, whether it be a TV, whether it be a telephone, whether it be, wireless headphones, earbuds, wireless earbuds. That we use our devices to tap into all this electromagnetic energy around us, to pick up on signals that we wish to communicate with. Telephone if you're talking to somebody. Your telephone if you're surfing the internet wirelessly. You're tapping into this energy that's being broadcast all around us. And the only way that, a normal average human being again can tap into it is with the help of a device, with the help of some foci. You've heard me use the word foci before. Foci is a tool. It's a tool. When I use the word foci, but I love the word foci. I love using my Latin terminology. We use foci in which to access this world around us. I want you to think about this, that these spirits, these inhuman, once human, unhuman spirits around us, why can't they tap into this new energy source, this new source of communication? They themselves are energy. We have these devices in which we use to access this energy. Now, these devices, and the entities figure it out fairly quickly because most entities are much smarter than we are. They realize they can use these items to communicate with our world and to communicate with us if they choose to interact with the physical world around them, and in a sense possess these items, to haunt these items in which to interact with the world. We live in the digital age. Why can't a spirit be a digital spirit? There's not much of a difference in energy types at all, except for one is conscious and the other one is not. And if his conscious energy chooses to ride this digital energy, to enter, say, this phone that I'm holding in my hands right now talking to you with, if there is some spirit around us that wishes to enter this device, to interact with this device, at its most basic, to turn it off, to change the brightness, to change the settings. But what if they use this device to communicate with us with it? They do. They do. Most people have learned, and most people know from experience, for those who have had I'm going to say fortune, they've been fortunate enough to experience it, that these spirits, this spiritual energy, these spirits themselves, can travel between devices with ease. As some people well know, that I do have a spiritual being, my little girl with no eyes who has been with me my entire life, my little spirit girl. She has been known to interact with people on the other end of broadcasts that I've done, live broadcasts that I've done, um, that she has reached through the 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 energy, the communication energy that is being produced by my phone, and to all the connections, to all the devices that are connected to my stream right now. She has reached out and went through the other people's devices and interacted with people on the other end of the broadcast and returned back to me the same way. As some people have experienced. And I'm going to bring up Super Horror Show on this one. I love bringing up this example because that's the most recent example of her reaching out and touching somebody. He had me on his show for an interview, and which I recommend anybody who hasn't seen Super Horror Show needs to watch it. And she became very interested. I always know when she's in the room because literally, it's like static electricity in the air. You know, the hair crackles on your arms, and the cats won't come in the room because they are just completely, the air is charged with static electricity, and they're walking across the carpet throwing off sparks right and left. And when that is going on, I know that she's focusing on something. And she was focusing on the line of questioning that Mike at Super Horror Show was doing. And she reached out and she touched my device. And I do believe this. I do believe she did this. And she shut down. She shut down the broadcast. She shut down his broadcast briefly because she didn't like. I believe she didn't like the line of questioning that he was going into at the time. It wasn't a matter of disrespect. She wanted to make herself known. So she took possession of my device. She laid her hands on my device. And she traveled through my device and she shut down his. To me, it was more like she was flexing her muscles. She was letting him know that she was here, that she was paying attention to him. And she also wanted to let him know who was in charge. With some spirits, it's all about dominance. Whoever you have, sometimes the spirit has to be the dominant one. Has to be the one that is dominant in the room or dominant in the conversation, and you have to acknowledge that dominance. And then normally you don't have any more interactions with them once you acknowledge that dominance. So yeah, super harsh. You got dominant. And yeah, Chris, it has happened on Bald and Bonkers as well. It's also happened on The Truth About Beer. The guys over Papa Joey and the guys over at The Truth About Beer too, as well. They've reached out and touched them. Now with The Truth About Beer, their God, their haunted doll. I made a connection, a spiritual connection with one of their haunted dolls on their show. They were doing a live show one night. I made a spiritual connection with the doll, and the connection, and this was over a device. See, you don't have to be in the room when you have these devices. The entities can possess these devices and come through. And the doll Julie, for those who have ever watched the show and know of the haunted doll they have, it's a very active doll. The doll is very, very beyond haunted. And its name is Julie. The spirit that inhabits the doll is Julie. And Julie came through my device. And I had a spirit walk session that night, an involuntary spirit walk section that night, to where my little spirit girl and Julie and myself were able to interact on a spiritual plane. Um, it was very moving. I felt so many emotions that the spirit of Julie was wanting me to experience that night. Um, and I was able to tell the guys, Papa Joey and Keith and them, the next day. Well, during their next show, I called in and we were talking about it. And I'll admit to it, I did cry. I was the crying naked Bigfoot because it was so moving. That experience I had with Julie. I talk a lot of shit about Julie, mainly because Julie and invaded my private space, but she didn't do so with any kind of malice or malevolent intent. She did it to make me understand who she was. And it was allowed by my little spirit girl. That contact was allowed by my little spirit girl. Which, by the way, my spirit guide is a unhuman spirit. Julie was a once human spirit. It was the spirit of a little girl who had died. That was inhabiting this doll. But my spirit guide is completely unhuman, and doesn't respond or act in the way that a one would expect a human to respond or act in any given situation. So I'll probably have to do another show about her because she's very, 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 very active nowadays. And as I was told once about her, and as I've noticed myself, she has the potential for being incredibly dangerous, incredibly dangerous. Um, it's like putting a leash on a lightning bolt. Eventually, it's going to shock the shit out of you. You can guide it around. It'll pull you here, pull you there, but eventually, it's gonna shock you. It's gonna hurt you. Um, I haven't sensed any malintent, but that is a story for another day. It's a story for another time. Um, I don't want to go off subject too much tonight. It's very easy for me to do so. Um, alrighty. Now there are, yeah, everybody drink. Oh, God, something just bit the shit out of me. Now, when a spirit enters a device, say a television set, or a remote control even, or a fan even, like the fan I have going in the background right now, um, they use, as most paranormal investigators will tell you, they need spirits that are not innately powerful, um, but intelligent and driven, need a lot of energy and able to manifest in our world, to manipulate our world. So what in our world has the most energy besides the human body? Well, fuck the devices around us. We have our power grid here. They can use that raw energy that flows, um, you know, through our walls into sockets into our devices, and through the batteries into our devices. They're able to use that energy and able to manifest themselves and sustain themselves for as long as that energy is present. Um, and in such, think of this. One of the fun examples I like talking about. I know it's fiction, but it's very possible. Um, and there are cases of it in the lore out there too, of haunted vehicles, much like Stephen King's Christine. Christine was a possessed vehicle that inhabited the vehicle and used the energy, ambient energy in the vehicle in which to drive the vehicle and to go forth and murder people and to put itself back together with it. Um, There are also cases of malevolent spirits. And I'm not going to say demonic and I'm not going to say demon because we all know how I feel about those words in general. That have been known to malevolent spirits that possess houses and they manipulate the electrical systems in the houses because they literally are dwelling within the walls of the houses and using the energy of the house to sustain themselves on our plane of existence until they are severed from that source, usually by a ritual. It usually takes a ritual that sometimes involves prayer, blood, sacrifices, so on and so forth, to sever their connection to the home and to their energy source to make them move on. Which, of course, when you hear about a priest, I'm not talking about just a Catholic priest, I'm not talking about the any of the Christian clergy or any of the other clergy from around the world of the myriad of belief systems and religions around us. Now, with that said, they have different ways in which to remove a spirit from a house. That it may not be something floating around the house, it may actually be possessing the house. Like when you see shows on television where they'll go into a supposedly haunted house that the lights are blinking on and off or the toilet starts flushing. It's possessing the electrical systems in the house. It's possessing the items within the house and using that energy in which to manipulate and then manipulating these items to make themselves known or try to communicate with us or try to scare the fuck out of us, depending on their intentions. Now, if you believe, like a great many of the Native American tribes here in the United States believe, that everything in existence contains its own natural spirit. A stone has its own spirit. Some of the Native American beliefs refer to as that spirit as something called a manitou, as the spirit of that item. It could be a spirit of a tree. It could be the spirit of a rock. It could be everything, literally everything in creation had its own spirit within it. And if you talk to some of the medicine chiefs today, they'll tell you that in modern times, with our modern pharomancy, I like using my big word. Pharomancy is a magical term used to describe technology in general in magical ways. Technology. It's called pharomancy, and manipulating technology and spiritual and supernatural ways. Pharomancy. Feel free to look it up. Or if you want me to describe it more, just let me know what pharomancy is. They'll tell you that with everything that is created within our world, whether it be a child's toy, whether it be a television set, whether it be a car, whether it be a building, that when these items are created, upon their completion, upon their final creation, there's a spirit that awakens within that item that makes up that item. It's imbued with its own spirit. It's, dare I say, possessed with a spirit. And in a lot of Native American rituals, some of the rituals are geared towards accessing the spirits within these items. The spirits within that could dwell, the spirit that could dwell, the manitou that could dwell within a television set, the manitou that could dwell within a cell phone, to access this manitou, the spirit of this item, in order to ask it for information. Say your television has been on the fritz. It makes absolutely no sense why your television's acting the way it's saying. It just turns on and off by itself. It just switches through channels. The volume goes up and down by itself. Now, a Native American medicine chief or shaman would come in and they would speak to the spirit. They would speak to the Manitou of that television set. I know this sounds absurd, but fuck, it really does happen. Been there, seen that. I've seen them speak to the Manitou of various wild animals. I've seen them speak to the Manitou of of a pickup truck one time, because the pickup truck, no matter what they did, they just couldn't get it to run right. And the medicine chief told the guy who had it, he says, "Well, it's probably pissed off at you. The Manitou of the Jeep is probably of the truck is probably pissed off at you." So he would talk to the Manitou. He would go and access the Manitou, the spirit of the Jeep, well, of the truck. I need to stop saying Jeep because I don't like using people's names, and I almost came close to telling you people's names. And came to an agreement. They came to an agreement with the Manitou within that vehicle. Like if it didn't like the way it was being treated, or it was not being washed, something offended the spirit of that, was offending the spirit of that truck. And the medicine chief told the owner of the truck what the Manitou was expressing, its displeasure, and that if he did A, B, and C to make it happen, to make it happy, that the truck would run right for it. Well, the guy did what the medicine chief told him to do with his truck, and it ran perfectly after that. Didn't have another problem with it. He appeased the spirit of the truck. He made it happy. Didn't offend it anymore. If you had to have a medicine chief come to talk to that misbehaving, possessed television set, they would talk to the Manitou, the spirit of that television set, find out why it was pissed off. Yeah, you need to get your car looked at. Why it was pissed off, and if it was a way to appease it, so it would behave itself and the television would play correctly. The medicine chief would express those concerns to the owner of it. And if it could appease it, the television would start behaving itself. The same as with the Manitou of a house. The house is acting up. If the power is just sketchy of the house, if the hot water is not running properly or something like that, because something has been done to upset the spirit of that house, the Manitou of that house, you would have the medicine chief would come in, talk to the spirit of that house, and tell it, and find out why it was, acting the way it was acting, and find some way to appease it. They never found a way to try to banish it, because with their beliefs, you couldn't banish or exorcise the spirit, the Manitou of these objects or these things. They were fundamentally linked to them. They were the life of these objects, and there was no way to separate the two. So you had to come to an agreement, to a settlement with it, between you and it, to be able to live harmoniously. That's a whole different subject, Mike. But that's a story for another day. Now the same is true with my faith. Those who may know or may not know, I am a voodoo priest. I'm a Hungan. And we see the natural spirits of the world as Loa or Uva. If I have to use the Ojib word for it. Please don't ask me to explain Ojib. I'll have to do that on another show. That'll be a story for another day, what Ojib is. Oh, my faith is so complicated sometimes. I can't talk about one thing without explaining. I can't talk about one subject without explaining 1,000 other subjects. It's a wonderful faith. Um, very rich in tradition, rich in its belief too, and rich spiritually. But I don't want to go too far off tangent with that one. So everyone will have to remind me to talk about OG on a different day. Alan, good to see you, man. Welcome, Alan. I have to watch this from the beginning if you're just joining. Talked about a little bit of Alan's showcasing is actually a really he's out of South Africa. He has a really amazing show, a really amazing YouTube channel that everybody needs to go check out. It's pretty cool. When I was first starting out doing bullshit stuff on YouTube, he actually had showcased a few of my videos on his show. Um, he was very kind to do that because those videos weren't very good, but they were fun. He was very kind to do that. He's an awesome and kind guy who is only trying to promote and expand the paranormal world here on YouTube. So he's really awesome guy for doing that. So I got to give him big shout out, big props. If you haven't gone and subscribed to his show, you need to go subscribe to his channel, guys. You really should check him out. He's pretty amazing, but he's had some really amazing people and talked about some really amazing subjects on his show as well. So he's inspirational. He really is. Okay. My faith and talking about the Loa. In my faith, if we need to do what's called sympathetic communication with the Loa, if we're trying to divine information, if we're trying to get answers to questions without doing a full-fledged bloodletting ritual being ridden by some of the greater Loa, we have a ritual that will allow a lesser Loa, a lesser spirit, a spirit of information. I call them, I call these Loas, these Loas of information. They know what their big brothers know. They know what their ancestors know. And their prices they charge for that information are pretty reasonable. They usually don't involve blood. They usually involve something simple like pipe tobacco and rum or fruit or flour. But when we need to communicate with them, we have to give them access to our world. They cannot manifest themselves in our world. They have to have a construct to communicate with us with it. They have to possess something. And when I was originally shown this ritual, this act, it was done with a transistor radio. And what my teacher, my mentor, Papa Thomas did, he introduced me and showed me how to summon forth these lesser Loas of information on our altar. But he said you should always have something like a small portable television set or a transistor radio or some sort of electronic device that had a speaker attached to it for them to communicate with you with it. He demonstrated it to me. He took a mixture of red brick powder. I'm not going to give you the whole recipe because I don't want anybody to do this and get fucked up. If you want the whole recipe, I'll give it to you, but got to give you the warnings attached to them. But I'm not going to do that tonight, or go into that tonight, because it's a great ritual, but it's also a tricky ritual too. It does have its dangers attached to it. And he showed me how to do what is called a lesser veve. A veve is a symbol that represents a spirit, an ancestor, some greater spirits, lesser spirits, minor spirits. It acts as both the lock key and it will act as a key and a door. When you draw it on something, um, you've turned that object into a portal for them to access it. So he had his transistor radio and he took a mixture, among other things, of cornmeal, freshly uh, made flour, ground flour, and red brick dust. And he drew a veve on the radio. Then he turned the radio on. He circled the radio in a mixture of ground black pepper and red brick dust. And within that circle he was the radio with the veve drone upon it. There was also a shot glass that was filled with white rum, and a banana was in the circle that was partially peeled, and there was a plug of freshly smoked tobacco. I'm not talking about smoking in a pipe. I'm talking about it just came out of tobacco barn, had been smoked in a tobacco barn, and was ready to be used. And he said these would be the offerings to this Loa of information, this lesser Loa, this lesser spirit, and that it would communicate with us through the transistor radio. It would possess the radio. It would use the radio to communicate with us. And he turned it on. And the first thing he asked, and he turned on the radio. He had it set on a channel, which was no channel. It was nothing but static. It was the channels between channels, the space between channels where there's nothing but static. So there's no risk of picking up anything, any radio broadcasts or anything. It was nothing but pure static coming through. And he turned the volume all the way up. And he spoke directly to the circle and to the radio when he was done. He asked, "Spirit, are you here with us now?" And I swear, it was like the room felt like it got so dark when he asked that question. It's like all the light was just drained out of the room. The shadows got much longer in the room. And I heard this voice in the static go, "Yes." And Papa Thomas saw the look on my face. And he looked at me and he said, "Be strong, be bold, don't show fear. Be strong, be bold, and don't show fear. And present your questions." He says, he didn't want me to ask questions, but when you present your questions, you speak them boldly and firmly to the Loa. And he asked it then, "Have we appeased you? Do you accept our offerings?" And heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. And then that voice came out of the static and said, "Yes," again. "Yes, are you going to answer our questions?" Heartbeat, heartbeat. Yes. The static spoke yes. If you can imagine a voice made out of static, that's what it was. It was scary. It's less scary now when I do it. But first seeing it, it scared the ever living shit out of me. He said, "Spirit, I just have simple questions. How many would you answer?" Heartbeat, heartbeat, and the static spoke, 3. And he looked at me and went, "What it means is the spirits you've summoned and the offerings you've given it have earned you the answer to 3 questions. So we're going to keep it simple." He just was demonstrating to me how to do it. The first question he asked it was, "How many people are in the room right now?" That voice said 2. And I went, fuck. He says, "Do you know the name of the man that's to my left?" And I was kneeling to his left. And it said, Yes, that was the second question that it answered. And then he asked it its third and final question. Do you know his name? And it just heartbeat, 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 heartbeat. And it finally, the static finally answered, yes. Well, naturally, I was, you know, off my ass, but I trusted Papa Thomas. I trusted him with my spirit, and I trusted him with my life. And he looked at the radio, and it sounded like when he was about to speak to it, right before he spoke again, it sounded like a nest of snakes made of static, all trying to speak at the same time, trying to speak the human language, trying to speak English through a reptilian mouth, using static as its voice. All these different sounds that sounded like voices, pitched higher, pitched lower, all happening at the exact same time. He reached across the circle with his hand, and he X'd out the Veve, and he says, I give you leave now, depart, spirit. And he took a handful of the same dust that he had, the same powder that he made of the brick dust and of the black pepper, which is a type of crossing powder I was to find out later. And he blew it onto the circle and the radio. And the radio went dead, like somebody had unplugged it from the wall or taken the batteries out of it, and it died. It's quite an experience. He demonstrated that a few more times during my education with him. He was with me the first few times that I did it. I have to say I've employed it more times than I care to admit to. I have met many lowest spirits of information out there. Some of them shadier than others. That provided answers to questions that I had, or provided guidance to me or to people that were with me. It's probably been about a year since I've done it, since I've asked for information in that way. I can't say I won't do it again, but it's a fascinating experience. Let's put it that way. And once you experience it firsthand, you'll come out of the experience changed, completely changed. If you weren't a believer going in, you'll be a believer when you leave the room. I'll guarantee you that. Alrighty, guys. To answer the question that I posed tonight, can electronic devices be haunted or possessed by spiritual entities? The answer is yes, they can be. They can be used. The spirit can be inherent to the device. The spirit can use the device to communicate. The spirit can use the device to cause havoc or mischief. But yes, it can use the energy of that device and the form of that device to interact with our world for the better or the worst, depending on the intent. With that, guys, I want to thank everybody who came on tonight to watch tonight's show. We have reached that magical happy time. As always, I appreciate everybody's time and effort that comes out to watch the show live. I really appreciate everybody who watches the replay later on. If you have any comments that you wish to leave, please leave them. I do enjoy constructive criticism, guys. So please don't think you're being mean. Unless you are being mean, then you're just being an asshole, which I'll be happy to respond to. I take constructive criticism seriously. So if there's a subject or a topic that you wish for me to cover or talk about, or if I have any knowledge of, or if there's a topic you'd like me to talk more about that I've only talked about briefly, please leave it in the comments, or you can reach me on Twitter at VoodooMan3. If you follow me, I will follow you back. And you can talk to me there, leave me messages there. If you have questions or concerns, I'll be happy to help you with them or address them. As always, I appreciate you. Love you long time, everybody. Thanks for coming out for another episode of What the Fuck Paranormal with the Naked Bigfoot. I am your humble host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. If you've been playing tonight's drinking game, I know you're probably feeling a little good. Please do not drink and drive, and go forth in this world and explore it safely and sanely. Have a great night, everybody.